Aloha and welcome to day 3 of the Go Giver Gratitude Challenge Relationship Edition. So, how are you loving this challenge so far? Are you finding that life is throwing every curveball your way this week? Well, I feel it for sure. And at the same time, what an even better reason to lean into this challenge. So, today we are diving into the third law, the law of influence. So let's just jump right in. In chapter 7, Pinder shared with Joe the 3 universal reasons for working: survive, right, to meet your basic living needs; save, to go beyond your basic needs and expand your life; and serve, to make a contribution to the world around you. He went on to explain that most people spend their entire lives focusing on the first. A smaller number focus on the second, but those rare few who are truly successful, not just financially, but genuinely successful in all aspects of their lives, keep their focus squarely on the third. So let's pause here and do some self reflection. In what order are your reasons for working? Is it in the order Pinder shared: survive, save, and serve? Are you serving with your work in the world? Or are you stuck in survival and saving? Or even just serving? I'm sorry, even just survival, right? Are you, what of those 3 areas, which of those 3 areas are you living into through your work? And I want to emphasize something that I didn't notice until this round of hosting the challenge. I remember Pinder talking about serve, survive, and save. But what I didn't remember connecting it to was the reason for working. I recently got assigned to read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by one of my coaches. And in all honesty, I never really resonated with this book in the past. So even if I heard of it before, which I did, I was never compelled to read it. I also realized that some of his teachings are controversial and some don't like his ways and his beliefs. But what I did learn from this book, which I actually really, really loved, by the way, so it's another book recommendation if you want to read something else after this challenge, is that we don't work for money. That's one of the teachings in that book, that working isn't for money, right? Which ties perfectly into this lesson that the reason for working is to serve, not to survive. That was an aha moment for me that you're getting to witness in almost real time, right? As I'm writing out my notes for this lesson, that's when it dropped in. So in chapter 8, Joe meets Sam, who shares with him the law of influence. Before he actually shares the law, Sam explains to Joe the true meaning of a network. It's a network of people who who know you, like you, and trust you. They might never buy a thing from you, but they've always got you in their backs of their minds, right? So they, maybe not the backs of their minds, they're the back of their mind. But they're always thinking about you. They always have you top of mind. And they're people who are personally invested in seeing you succeed. And of course, that's because you're the same way about them. They're your army of personal walking ambassadors. And the secret sauce for this type of network to happen is this: stop keeping score. He told Joe that keeping track isn't networking, it's poker. And it goes on to share that most of the time, what people call win-win is really just a disguised way of keeping track, making sure we all come out even, that nobody gets the advantage, even Steven. I scratch your back, so now you owe me. When you base your relationships, he continues to say, in business or anywhere else in your life, on who owes who what, that's not being a friend. That's being a creditor. And furthermore, watch out for the other guy. Watch out for his interests. Watch his back. Forget about 50-50. 50-50 is a losing proposition. The only winning proposition is 100%. Make your win about the other person. Go after what he wants. Forget win-win and focus on the other person's win instead. So now let's pause here, because scattered in those quotes from the book were really some powerful mic drop moments from our friend Sam. So backing this up, right? First of all, do you have a network? Not a business network necessarily. I mean, it could be, but a true network based on the definition shared by Sam. Do you have an army of personal walking ambassadors? Does it have to, it doesn't have to be in a business. It could be your friend group. It could be groups of like a group of parents, right? My daughter goes to gymnastics and we have our gym moms that I feel are a pure and what Sam is explaining as a network. It could also be colleagues, right? It's simply a group of people who aren't always keeping score, a group who doesn't keep track of the win-win. And to deepen this self-reflection, let's take a look at your most intimate relationships. Do you find yourself keeping score in your marriage? Do you often have the thought of it's not fair when it comes to how much you do for your partner versus how much they do for you? Or are you focused on how maybe unfair or how hard you're working in your relationships? Ultimately, are you being a friend to your partner, your spouse, or are you being a creditor? It wouldn't surprise me if in some way you have been keeping score, because in our society, that's what we've been taught, that marriage should be 50-50. And those who have debunked this belief still don't truly understand this concept. They say things like, well, sometimes in relationships, it's going to be 70-30 or 20-80, but they still are keeping score and therefore haven't really changed the belief around this, right? So what we must do is we must lean into the concept that our job is to show up 100% in our authentic selves 100% of the time. And we'll get into authenticity more in the next law. But for now, just know that keeping score is a losing proposition in your marriage, in any relationship, and in every area of your life. Okay, so here is the third law, the law of influence. Your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. So let's take a moment to break this down a bit more, because I think it's really power-packed and can be overlooked, because I know I've overlooked it many times before when I've been doing these challenges. So, do you ever feel like your partner doesn't listen to you? What about your kids? What about friends, colleagues, coworkers, your boss? Have you ever found yourself frustrated that it feels like you're always speaking to people with selective hearing? Or, right, would you like to have more influence on the people that you love, to have more say, or even have your thoughts considered by others? I know I used to think that way all the time. especially the one about selective hearing. Once I learned the essence of this law, things miraculously began to change for me. And I'll share a little bit more about that later. But for now, let's just know that this law is to help others hear you better, right? If you're feeling unheard, I really encourage you to lean into this law. And I want you to really listen to what this law has to say. Okay. Now let's look at the next part of the law that states how abundantly you place other people's interests first. Well, I don't know about you, but that right here feels quite codependent. I was formerly trained as a marriage and family therapist, and codependency was such a huge focus in my training and in my own marriage, really. I read Codependent No More by Melody Beattie, and I went to Al Anon to be less codependent. And even coming from the substance abuse field for years, that's where I worked, all we taught our clients and all we were taught as clinicians was how to cancel this codependency culture that we were in. And so here's a brand new awareness for me. Like, again, you're witnessing this in real time as I was prepping for this lesson. I've realized that the pendulum has swung too far in the opposite direction. We first were taught to be overly enmeshed and codependent in our marriages, in our relationships. Then we became overly independent and even anti-dependent in our society, right? And I believe this law is helping us find harmony in the middle. We are a social species. We are social creatures. We, in fact, need others to survive. We're not meant to live in pure isolation. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want you to misinterpret this law and hear it say, take care of others and don't focus on your own needs. No, it's not saying that. What I believe it's saying has to do with the beginning part of this law. There's an emphasis there that I want you to hear. It's all about your influence. You don't, in fact, need to put anyone else's interest in front of your own. Like, you can actually say, no, I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to put myself first and enjoy life. Like, that's totally not necessary. But if you would like to have more influence on those that you love, or even the people around you, or even spreading the wisdom that you have inside of you to the rest of the world, right? If you want to increase your influence with others, we must try to become, maybe not try, we must become interested in other people's interests, in the people that you would love to influence. Get interested in their interests. Give them your time and energy to learn what it is that they are interested in. And this in turn will increase your influence when you have something to say. And I'm not sharing this with you to teach you how to manipulate others, but rather to help your message be received and heard by others. I know you have something powerful and profound to share, even if it's just with one person. Your thoughts count and you matter. Okay, time for another self-reflection again. Are you a highly independent person? Do you find yourself wanting to be taken care of in your marriage? How about more than in your intimate relationships than outside, right? And do you seek to be taken care of maybe in all of your relationships? Or do you seek to take care of others? Do you like when people rely on you? Does it feel good when you're needed? So let's check our codependent meter. There isn't any right or wrong answer here. I simply want you to notice what you're noticing about your relationships with other people, including your spouse. And how much dependence, interdependence, codependence is infused into that relationship, and whether it's influencing your happiness or not. Okay. Although there were many, many, many more golden nuggets scattered throughout chapter 7 through 9, which covers this particular law, the last lesson I want to bring to your attention for this conversation is, and might be, the most important and the most profound one of all. So Pindar chimed in towards the end of the conversation and explained what enlightened self-interest is, and shared that it's when you watch out for what other people need with the faith that when you do that, you'll get what you need. So I want to emphasize the word faith here. This is something I had missed all the times I read this book prior. What Pindar is teaching Joe here is to trust in a power greater than himself and to have faith that when he gives wholeheartedly from a full cup, that his needs will always be taken care of. Because we, in fact, live in a universe where we are all one. Whether you believe in God or another version of a higher power, something most religions, if not all, acknowledge that we are all connected. So the final self-reflection opportunity here is to ask yourself, what do I believe? Do I believe in God? Do I have a higher power? Am I someone who believes more in a neutral universal presence and power? Does this invisible power that I subscribe to have a name, right? And do you have a relationship with this essence and this energy? And if you're going to ask it to yourself, do I have a relationship with God, with the universe, with the powers that be? And do I believe that we are all created from love? Do I believe that we are all connected? Basically, I want you to journal on what your spiritual beliefs are. The reason why it's so important, and this is such an important aspect of the work that I do with my clients, but for anyone who wants to grow, right, is because you can only grow so much before you bump up against things that you cannot explain. One of the teachings my mentor shared with me was that that I think had a significant impact on my next level up, my, what's the word I'm looking for? Like transformation, transcendence, my awakening, was something she called the levels of awareness. And I will share with you more on that in a different bonus lesson in your portal. But for now, just know that once we move out of victimhood, then through the phase of self-empowerment, we can only advance further if we find a belief in something beyond our human self. Okay, I lied. I have a few more questions for you to ponder before I let you go. You can pause it here, or I will collect all the questions at the end of this video for you to journal on. But here's my questions. How have you been living in trust and faith in your relationships? It doesn't have to be religious faith, but a trust in something beyond your control. You can even call it the grand overall design or destiny if you want, but either way, take some time to ask yourself if you have been trying to control the outcomes in your relationship and not allowing your faith to lead the way. Bottom line, love fully and live in faith. I will leave you with this. Your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. How will you apply this law in your life today? How will you abundantly place other people's interests and needs first? Don't forget to email me what you did to apply each law in your life. I want to know whether you responded to day 1, day 2. Respond now. Let me know. Tell me how you've lived into each of these laws each and every day, and go give them. I will see you tomorrow. Bye for now.